Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Shift Happens, your marketing automation migration playbook. Hi, Aviva.
Hello, Rima.
Today we're going to talk about data cleaning. This is the first step of migrating to a new marketing automation system.
Exactly. And when we talk about data cleanup, we talk about lead, contacts, persons, call it however you want. But these are the records that we plan to reduce. And this is a real opportunity to influence the price you'll be paying for your marketing automation provider, since many times this price is driven from the data volume that you have in place. So if you're able to significantly reduce the number and then maintain it, you can actually negotiate a better price. So in our case, we are using Salesforce as our CRM system and Marketo as our marketing automation system. In Salesforce, there are leads and contacts, and in Marketo, there is the person object. I strongly recommend to start with the lead object, since contacts are usually associated with existing accounts, and this is more sensitive data.
Tell me, what is the criteria taken into account for reducing the database?
For example, leads that are marked as recycled, in our case, it's an actual lead status. We will not want to go ahead and just delete them since we plan to reach out to them later in the process. And the same for marketing. Some criteria not necessarily mean that you can go ahead and delete them. Maybe you have plans for these records in the future. The criteria that take into consideration both sales and marketing are leads that have some sales activity, but it is over a year old, or leads that don't have any activity at all. This can be as a result of invalid email, or maybe there is no email at all, stuff like that. Unqualified leads. Somebody reached out, spoke to that person, and marked it as an unqualified lead. In our case, again, it's an actual lead status. In other companies, maybe you have other processes to mark leads as unqualified. That's for the sales side. For the marketing side, so non-marketable leads for over a year. These are people that asked not to reach out to them. That means that maybe the person left them the email is no longer valid. Also, chronic non-responders are people who you tried to reach out to at least 8 times and they never opened an email or clicked anything. These criteria you can feel very comfortable with. Once you find this data, you can go ahead and delete those records from the system.
The idea is to reduce records which don't serve any of the parties.
Exactly.
What about the rest? Let's say duplicates, contacts.
That's a great question. So duplicates is another option, but it's usually more complex to identify duplicates and then decide which record to delete. You want to delete the one that is least used, so you need to find that record. With contact deletion, you can identify accounts that are inactive. Some companies maintain this data better than others. If you feel comfortable with the data you have, go ahead and delete the irrelevant contact. You might also consider deleting the account itself. But as I said before, it's more sensitive data.
And again, this is relevant for Salesforce, where contact is a completely different object.
Exactly.
How does this process of deletion look like?
Okay, so this should be coordinated between the marketing admin and the sales admin. In our case, we are using Salesforce. It's the Salesforce admin and also the admin of Marketo. Different systems have different deletion speeds, and you want to make sure that no data is moving over again to the same system just because it was deleted before. In Salesforce, you can go ahead and use bulk APIs in the process. You will get a lot of errors, so I recommend to do it gradual. Start with 10 records, see how it looks like. Maybe you will decide to turn off some validation rules, flows, whatever you'll decide to make the cleanup faster and smoother. Once you finish it, you can go ahead and turn everything on. I would suggest the beginning of the week before everyone starts working, also for you to feel comfortable and not to feel the pressure of people working on the system and then you're getting errors. You can do it relatively at ease. I suggest using reports for that, and for that we prepared a spreadsheet to show how such a report would look like. It is very straightforward, honestly.
The spreadsheet will be linked to this episode.
Yes, of course. The mandatory fields here are Salesforce ID and the email address. These are the mandatory, and the rest of them is to provide you confidence around the data. So both the Salesforce admin and the Marketo admin should be familiar with the data that they see in there. So for example, if you have record types, you can put the creation time of the record. If you see some discrepancies in the data, this is where you start to ask yourself questions, whether you're seeing the same records, maybe you made some mistake in the data that you pulled, maybe you need to go through it again. In general, you're supposed to see the same stuff. The source of this lead, the owner, the status, phone number. Again, it's up to you to decide which fields you want to put in there in order to feel confidence around the data. And once you start the deletion, again, use the reports that you have in the system and make sure that you recognize the number that you see in the report. So you start the deletion process, look at the report, see that the data goes lower. Make sure you are familiar with the numbers. Once the deletion stops, go to the report, see that you're familiar with the numbers. Probably you will not be able to delete everything at once. Then you will have to iterations of deletion until you get to a good enough place.
Essentially, you're suggesting creating reports per group of criteria and then start deleting them in a progressive process.
Yes, some reports are easier to create than others. If you're able to put all of your criterias in one Salesforce report, sometimes it is easier to put two criterias in one report and have another report with another criteria due to limitations around reports. But in general, yes, create a Salesforce report with the mentioned criterias.
Question: how about historical data? Everything that activity logs, performance, etc.
Yes, we have been through this in our project. We looked into it, and it was a tough decision that we had to make. Honestly, we saw that this data is not associated to any key process that we have in place. We really decided to not move it to our new system because,
Sometimes letting go is the best way to move forward.
yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Aviva, for walking us through, and we'll see you at the next episode of Shift Happens.
Thank you, Lima.